Good day, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 in Psychedelics. We are Group 5, your hosts for today. Click like, follow, and tune in for more Psy Facts. On today's episode, let's talk about emotional regulation. Nowadays, people are gradually more aware of the importance of mental health, and that is why we are here to help you on the road to mental wellness. Emotional regulation is part of mental wellness. So what is emotional regulation? Emotion regulation is a term generally used to describe a person's ability to effectively manage and respond to an emotional experience. People unconsciously use emotion regulation strategies to cope with difficult situations many times throughout each day. Most of us use a variety of emotion regulation strategies and are able to apply them to different situations in order to adapt to the demands of our environment. Some of these are healthy, some are not. Healthy coping strategies such as managing stress. Self-injury is, however, considered an unhealthy coping strategy. Unhealthy strategies are Self-injury is, however, considered an unhealthy coping strategy. Unhealthy strategies are those that may leave lasting damage, such as lifetime scars, chronic injuries, or wounds, result in unanticipated damage, such as wounding too deeply, or lead to avoiding dealing with situations that will inevitably require a head-on solution. For example, when a child commits a mistake, they might get scared and lie to their parents about it, or avoid confronting them for fear of punishment. Their parents may eventually discover what they did, and the child, in all probability, will end up facing the same consequences that they were trying to avoid. Listening and responding to the fear emotion proved futile to the child. However, the same emotion, fear, would have proven helpful for someone being chased by a wild animal in the forest. In that situation, running to avoid confronting the savage beast would have been the correct decision. It is therefore crucial to judge when to trust emotional triggers and act on them, and when not to. In other words, it is essential for us to understand how to regulate or control our emotions so we could use them optimally.
And of course, if one of your goals is to be, more positive, you may regulate your negative emotions by focusing on more positive ones. Intrinsic emotion regulation is the regulation of our own emotions, or influencing a change in yourself. Sometimes this kind of regulation is driven by what our culture views as, good or bad feelings, or basically how we should behave in certain circumstances, such as funerals and the like. We had just covered the topic of emotional regulation. Let's now talk about the opposite of emotional regulation, which is emotion dysregulation. So, what is this exactly? It is a term used to describe an inability to regularly use healthy strategies to diffuse or moderate a negative emotion. While all people occasionally use less than ideal emotion regulation strategies, individuals who regularly experience what feels like overwhelming, intense, negative emotions are much more likely to rely on unhealthy strategies like, self-injury. Since we just defined emotion dysregulation, this now begs the question of what really causes emotions to be so overwhelming or feel overwhelming. Well, it is really important to note that the experience of an emotion per se is not what leads to its difficulties. More on it is the interpretation of this emotion that tends to rack up feelings and sense of not being able to tolerate them. This is what we call a vicious emotional cycle, where emotions, thoughts, and our behaviors are all linked together. Taking for example, let's say a friend who walks past you in the hallway without acknowledging you. Of course, you then immediately have rapid set fire of feelings. One of these would be confusion or disappointment, self-doubt, or anger. And of course, that quickly turns into a series of thoughts about that event. Like, you then start to question, what did I do wrong? Or I bet that person or they are mad at me for that one thing that I did or happened like a few weeks ago. And because of this, the initial cascade can lead into an intense or acute feelings of, like, of course, frustration, panic, or insecurity. And you may have a strong desire to, not be feeling the negative feelings that are popping up. Continuing with the example, this cycle can obviously become vicious and have a typical go to pattern over time, unless something can be done to change the cycle. Continued avoidance of the feelings associated with that friend or event may lead to additional negative thoughts and feelings about that certain person. This, of course, then further supports one's initial interpretation of the events that can lead to more negative thoughts and feelings. The person may then think, our friendship is ending, they never really liked me anyway, what happens if they share the secrets that they know about me, will I lose more friends, oh no, it's happening all over again, and you just have this massive breakdown about it. And of course, honestly, this cycle can be even more intense when the events that occur are more serious or somehow can tie to earlier negative experiences like trauma or abuse, or those heavy-handed topics. Of course, talking about emotional regulation, here are some emotional regulation strategies taken from Manhattan Mental Health Counseling. These are some of what they have talked about. So let's start off with number 1, which is mindfulness. This is a state of being which allows us to notice our own present experience. The idea is that we are able to speak for ourselves but really unable to listen to what we are saying. This skill or strategy, we are able to have a good association with emotions that we are feeling. Even with just 15 minutes of our day of having these mindful exercises will allow a person to feel prepared for a possible trigger for intense emotions. And this kind of state of being is mostly used for intense emotions. Next would be attention shifting strategies. By being able to divert our emotions, we are able to moderate its impacts towards us. Much like how we use our phones during or when we are bored, its concept is much like that. But of course, this is not advisable, as this may turn the idea of completely shutting down the negative emotions, which, when triggered, can cause or can make you feel more intense emotions, as it hadn't been dealt with properly the last time it happened. Next would be forward-looking strategies, which is preparing by anticipating how a person feels about a specific situation, then allows the person to plan ahead and be able to alter the emotional impact because of the situation. Taking, for example, avoidance. By completely avoiding a person who angers you, you will not be able to feel the negative emotion, but instead will eventually put a strain on the relationship. This is why it is important to address situations like this to avoid these kinds of problems. Another example of this would be planning ahead certain rewards because of certain things, like reward of eating something good by completing a certain task. Positive talks, or what we call reframing, counters negative thoughts we have of ourselves every day. Using it empathetically allows us to counter these negative biases we have of ourselves, which surely can help bring our spirits up and be able to face these intense emotions. That is why it is very important to know strategies that can help regulate the emotions to keep these unwanted negative thoughts away. Let us remember to take time to breathe, assess, and think about our emotions and how we are feeling, along with the people around you, how they're feeling, and the entire environment of how you're feeling about that. Negative emotions are obviously normal, but we should always know when to come back from that. Of course, no one is perfect in this world, so let us not dwell much in negativity. Okay, remember never to invalidate those negativity either, or those negative feelings either, as we won't ever move on from it. Let me tell you this, it's okay. Hmm? Things happen, but let's stand up and face new challenges head on. Again, this is Group 5, and once again, thank you for listening to our podcast, Psychedelics. Goodbye and have a nice day. Stay safe and God bless.
The pandemic created a wave of mental health issues. People developed anxiety, some were not able to do their recreational activities or hobbies that help them cope with their issues and help them regulate their emotions. All these can cause emotional dysregulation. The pandemic created a wave of mental health issues. People developed anxiety, some were not able to do their recreational activities or hobbies that help them cope with their issues and help them regulate their emotions. All these can cause emotional dysregulation. It might be tough to control or regulate our emotions when we are stressed. Things that ordinarily don't annoy us may cause us to respond more adversely or angrily. However, emotional dysregulation, the feeling that you have no control over how you react to stimuli, is a common reaction to pandemic. Pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Before you answer, consider what is going on in the present moment. Focus on the positive or neutral aspects of your life. Pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Before you answer, consider what is going on in the present moment. Focus on the positive or neutral aspects of your life. Finally, consider what triggers and adds to your feelings of dread or worry. You may work toward a solution once you've identified what's upsetting you. That's all for today, folks. Once again, this is Group 5 and welcome to Psychedelics. Click like and follow to tune in for more Psych Facts.